I watched this video from a a YouTuber called, well, a YouTubers. They're kind of like a duo called Overly Sarcastic Productions, which I've done a few of reactions to them on this channel, and they actually have a video about Cleopatra. I never did a reaction to that video for the channel. This was on my own time, but it really changed my perspective because to put it nicely, Augustus's and Rome's propaganda against Cleopatra is kind of what stuck. Again, Augustus was really effective in his propaganda because, the image of the Eastern seductress and temptress who turned Mark Antony astray, and kind of like that image of kind of like a succubus in a sense. Um, of Cleopatra is the very popular one that remains, and the enemy of Rome and all that. And the thing is that after watching that video, that Cleopatra video from Overly Sarcastic Productions, it changed the way I viewed her. Like, Cleopatra was actually an incredibly able ruler who was actually really good at what she did, actually cared about her people. I believe she's like the only Ptolemy to actually learn Egyptian. Shocking, right? Like, I I remember I used to make fun of the Ptolemies a lot for the incest, right? And I was like, oh my god, you guys are your incest. And then someone commented, well, Egyptian dynasties, they did incest. So if anything, the Ptolemies are, honoring Egyptian custom. And I'm like, so wait a minute, to integrate themselves in Egypt, they'll take the incest route, but not learn the actual language? That seems a bit whack to me, but you think learning the language would be like the first step, but I also understand that they were conquerors and the elite were the Greeks, and they probably felt it beneath them to learn the language of those they had conquered, but still, I mean, I guess we'll do the incest to integrate ourselves. We'll do that, but not the language part. But, um, you know, the thing is that Cleopatra was like one of the only Ptolemy to learn Egypt, and she was actually incredibly able, and she actually like wanted to make Egypt better. It's a shame she didn't fully get to reign, because from that video, her reign was said to be incredibly great, but she unfortunately got wrapped up in all the Roman politics. And it was smart at her at first. She got involved with Julius Caesar, a smart move on her part, getting involved with Caesar, um, who was set to take the Roman world by storm, so she could kind of remain a client queen, while Julius Caesar was primed to take over Rome, and her, bastard with Julius Caesar would be incentive for her to be fine. And again, that was smart of her. And then, like, it was even smart when she got with Mark Antony, who was said to be the new rising star of Rome, and who at a time controlled the eastern part of Rome. So I understand her hitching onto these guys for survival, right? It's just, it all fell apart, unfortunately, when Mark Antony and Augustus went at it, and then Augustus triumphed, and he wouldn't have incentive to keep Cleopatra's son with Caesar, Caesarion, alive, because that's a rival to the Caesar name. So, yeah, unfortunately, she was smart with Julius, and she was, on paper, yeah, smart to go with Mark Antony. Unfortunately, just in the long run, you know, tying herself down with Mark Antony ended up doing much more damage because unfortunately they had to contend with Augustus and Agrippa. So that's kind of the whole part, but I think she was really smart and did what she needed to do out of survival. You get me? And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of the bureaucracy elements and how she administered from Historia Civilis, who is kind of the best when it comes to explaining, a lot of the politics of stuff and really breaking it down in very simple ways. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than I should probably get right into it. So if you want to watch the original video by Historia Civilis, the link is down in the description down below. And if you enjoy my channel and you want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to please like, comment, subscribe, and maybe consider becoming a Patreon member. You get early access, and it would really help me out a lot. Now with that said, and now without any further ado, let's do.
Egypt's political system in Cleopatra's time was pretty unusual. In this video, I'm not really that interested in talking about pharaohs, or the royal court, or political intrigue. That's a completely different discussion. What I want to get into today is Egypt's bureaucracy, and how it functioned on a day-to-day basis. This is usually underemphasized by historians, but I find it utterly fascinating. In Cleopatra's Egypt, and by that I mean Egypt in the 1st century BCE, it was pretty much a totalitarian state. I know that that's a pretty crude way of putting it, but it's true. The level of bureaucratic control that the government exerted over day-to-day life was extreme, even by our standards. And by ancient standards, it was off the charts.
Really?
Egypt's power didn't come from its military might, or from political cunning. Their power came from incredible wealth. The wealth, in turn, came from agricultural production, which was the envy of the world. And
it's true. Egypt has been called the breadbasket of the world. And, you know, I was looking at... I remember I went offhandedly, because sometimes I kind of Google questions, and, you know, offhandedly, I Googled, how did the Egyptians, the native Egyptians, feel about the Ptolemies? And, you know, there were some comments, saying, oh, they loved Alexander, because when Alexander came, he was kind of like a liberating force from the Persian Empire. But I also read somewhere that the Egyptians weren't the fondest of the Ptolemies. Again, I don't take all these at face value. I kind of like, you know, I just kind of want to hear what people say. There are times where the Ptolemies, especially later on, were just incredibly incompetent and awful. I think a big part is, like, around the Battle of Raphia era, like, when Antiochus the Great took control of the Seleucid Empire, and Rome was kind of on the rise, having, like, freshly conquered Greece and whatnot, and taken out Macedon, where, a big part of it is that there was a lot of rebellion, because after the Battle of Raphia, the Egyptians, or the Ptolemies rather, did something very different. They incorporated a lot of native Egyptians into the phalanx, which is something that the successor states did not do much, because they were worried, since they were the minority, that the natives would rise against them, and that's actually what happened to the Ptolemies. The native Egyptians, realizing how powerful and important they were now, because they were used heavily in the Macedonian phalanx and to win the Battle of Raphia, then kind of rebelled, and then the Ptolemies had to, like, put a stamp on that. So you do kind of get, like, the reason I bring that up is because you do kind of get an impression that, you know, that then there not all was great in paradise, you know what I mean? And there was tension between the native Egyptians and the Ptolemies, and it's cool, interesting to see. But, like, when in the first few Ptolemies, because, like, the Ptolemies are interesting, is that they started off great, like the Ptolemy the First, and then they just kind of, like, went awful. But yeah, at its peak, Ptolemaic Egypt was incredibly rich culturally and also materially. They turned Alexandria into, like, this hub of knowledge and, you know, culture. So definitely Ptolemaic Egypt at its peak was an envy to the world, you know?
tightly controlled by the state. Almost all agricultural land in Egypt was royal land, and by that I mean that it was personally owned by the pharaohs.
But I could see why they would do that. Again, they're the minority. I know that the Macedonian Greeks, they are ruling over lands with a lot of diversity. Like the Seleucid Empire, for example, right? The Macedonian Greeks are they're outnumbered by the natives, so I think them being very centralized in that sense makes sense because they probably want to avoid, right, losing and giving the natives too much power because they're the minority and they don't want to be like, oh man, yeah, the natives might get ideas to just get rid of us. So I could see why they would go that route.
The ruler of Egypt, and through them the Egyptian bureaucracy, had absolute control over this land, and through the land, the wealth of the entire country. Let me give you some specific examples. Every year, the Royal Agricultural, I don't know what word to use, Ministry, Department, Bureau, let's just say the Royal Agricultural People, provided farmers with the seeds that they were supposed to plant. Since it was royal land, the farmers had no choice but to accept. At harvest time, they were required to return to the Royal Agricultural People the exact same amount of seed that they were given to start with, along with a substantial cut of the crop yields, which served as their rent payment for the year.
Oh.
If you think about it, they were basically renting the seeds too.
Dang.
If a farmer deviated from the state's agricultural plan in any way, they were brought up on charges and prosecuted as an oath breaker. In cases like this, a council of elders called a kenbet would sit in judgment, and the punishment would normally be something like a sizable fine. By the way, the Egyptian legal system was much more flexible than the Roman one. The Romans prided themselves on their strict legalism. The Egyptians, on the other hand, prided themselves on their pragmatism, and their courts reflected this. What was the point of punishing an oathbreaker with corporal punishment when all the government wanted was to recoup their lost revenue? You see? Pragmatism.
I see.
Believe it or not, that was just...
That's very interesting, huh? It makes sense, though.
one small aspect of Egyptian bureaucratic control. If a farmer wanted to do something simple, like cut down a tree that was in the way, they had to plead their case in front of the Royal Agricultural People. Think of it like municipal bylaws, with the added bonus of literally being afraid for your life and livelihood if you ever made an infraction.
Dang.
The fact that the land was personally owned by the pharaoh was not just a formality, it was the law, and it was drilled into the farmers' heads on a daily basis.
Yeah, dang, but then you'd be, like, nervous, right? Like, you can't even cut down a tree without having to take it up to, like, basically the government. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so everything being the king's land. We covered this, like, what? Wasn't it in the English Civil War series by Kings in General? Something like Charles made most land the king's land, and there were fines against going against it. I'm probably not getting it right. It's been many months since we covered the English Civil War, but something like that, which was kind of a big cause of resentment, so that's interesting.
The entire farming system was carefully designed by royal officials to maximize both profits and crop yields, and they were incredibly good at this. Another example, if you wanted to brew alcohol, you had to apply to the government for a brewing license and pay a small fee. This sounds familiar to us, but it was virtually unheard of in the ancient world. Once you got that license, you were required to buy barley from a state-owned company, which, on top of their arbitrary prices, levied a hefty sales tax for its trouble. Once you brewed the beer, you were required to sell it back to another state-owned company at, again, arbitrary prices. That company then took that beer, turned around, and sold it for a profit. If it happened to be sold overseas, they took another cut in the form of export duties. As you can see, the government got like 5 or 6 bites at the pie before the product even made it to market.
Yeah, talk about maximizing profit as much as they can, right? Oh my goodness, just all this. I could see how, like, they were rich, like, early on, especially, you know? Like, with stuff like this, no wonder Ptolemaic Egypt was, like, super rich. I think that's a big reason why Ptolemy the First took it, if I remember correctly from the Diadochi War series. A big part of it was, like, he recognized the richness and potential of Egypt, and not only in terms of its, like, crop yielding, breadbasket ways, but just, like, this in general, you know? And he was smart to just take it. Like, yeah, very smart.
This kind of heavy taxation, where the government was involved at every step in the supply chain, was present in many industries. People wouldn't see a system like this again until the modern age. In other aspects of life, state intrusiveness reached levels that we would consider unthinkable. During harvest season, people needed permission just to leave their farm or village. Freedom of movement was thrown out the window in the name of profit and productivity.
Oh
To be
my.
honest, this kind of reminds me of Tsarist Russia, where people needed special royal permission to move to another farm, and sometimes that permission was denied.
You can't even just leave your own farm without having to straight up like argue, like ask permission. Yeah, I could see how some of this though, like obviously if you're looking at it in terms of production, wealth thing, it's effective for sure, obviously, but yeah, for like the average folk, like, dude, I can't even like cut down a tree. Like, you know, I'm just thinking like what an average folk would think. I can't just leave this farm and go somewhere else without having to make the government involved. Like, yeah, no wonder he used the word totalitarian. Like, again, I guess it's great for the money and the wealth for sure, but like for the average folk, I imagine this would kind of be like, this sucks. Like, you know, I would be thinking if I had to think about that. I'm like, I guess. I mean, you know. Yeah, just, oh boy, yeah, they were really, really in control, wow. I didn't expect that, actually.
With Russia, historians had to invent the term serf, because people living under that regime were clearly seen as less than subjects, but more than slaves. The same kind of thing could be argued for ancient Egypt. Less than subjects and more than slaves. I don't think it's crazy to say that in many ways, the rulers of Egypt personally owned their country. And maybe, depending on your point of view, the people in it.
Yeah.
The entire state was basically designed from top to bottom to maximize profits. This helps to explain why.
Yeah, they're running their nation like a business, dude. Like, this is like... this is a straight up business, you feel me? Wow.
The Romans, who basically didn't even have a bureaucracy, looked at the Egyptians like they were from another planet. Before you click away, a brief word.
Oh,
I've
wait.
been really hesitant to
That's
go
it?
down the Patreon road because, frankly, I look around and almost without fail, the reward system everybody set up / Historica Civilis.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that was it. Wow, that was short. But dang. Basically, that's just what I got is like, yeah, we're running, this nation is a business, and we're gonna get rich. We need the money, you know? Here comes the money, dude. I mean, great for the money in the business side, great for the pharaohs, but yeah, I could just imagine how some of this stuff would kind of frustrate the average. I wonder how the Romans changed the administration. I wonder how much they did away with all this when they took control. They're like, huh, this is a bit odd, you know what I mean? I don't know. But, yeah, overall, another really cool video. It's cool to learn a bit more about Ptolemaic Egypt and what the heck was going on. The Hellenistic era and the successors are my favorite era in history to learn about, so I'm really happy. I wish he would do one on the Seleucid Empire. The Seleucid Empire is my favorite of the successor kingdoms, so I would like to learn more about them. If Historia Civilis, if I could ever like ask him to do something, I would probably ask, hey, can you do like a quick like video of how the heck the Seleucid Empire was administered? I don't know, I would find that so fascinating. But yeah, I'll end the video right here, and I'll see you guys next time, I suppose. Bye, everyone.